Okay, so I just wanted to say a quick thing that would maybe lead to a longer thing because there's so many depths to this thought and so many levels and so much. I mean, it's such a great big thing, matter. Um, and essentially, but what I want to say is someone expressed to me, not clearly, but I had to really sit and understand where they were coming from. And what was expressed is really that just their discomfort with the word illiteracy, which has led to like a whole conversation with a few people. Um, so first of all, I want to say I never ever intend to offend anyone by using any language. It's never an intention of mine. However, I can always take accountability for if I do offend someone. And I think that's like, it's interesting that this came up because this is the whole like sort of essence behind my project is that language is important and that language, it means different things to different people depending not only just by the meaning, which is funny because I'm just a very literal, as in like my little puny brain is quite literal. Maybe I'm on the spectrum for something. I genuinely think I am. And have been told in school growing up that I am, although it hasn't been detected, and I don't really believe in putting labels on things. But let me not stray from the point too much, is that the way my brain works is I'm quite literal in the sense of if something has a meaning, I use that like in the dictionary. I use a word in that way, and sometimes I don't always understand, which is actually just the fact. And this is the thing about language. There is a meaning. Like, for example, English is my first language. It is derived from Latin and Greek, and there's so much meaning behind every single word, or like parts of words that have been put together, which I think is quite beautiful. And maybe I inherited that in my later life from my grandfather, who loved language and did study Greek and Latin and made sure always if we didn't understand a word that we understood every origination, which annoyed the hell out of me when I was younger. But as I've gotten older, I think it's just quite beautiful, and I think language quite poetic and actually just amazing and creative and beautiful. So when I say I use words literally, I just mean like whatever the meaning is, I tend to use it. And I struggle sometimes when people, even like some metaphors, because I can't visualize it, or I struggle to find meaning in just the cultural sense, because that's another thing. Language culturally means different things in different places. It means different things coming out of different people's mouths, depending on who you are. People read into it differently. It's a big matter, and I firmly and genuinely believe that all the issues in the world come from communication and actually lack of communication and miscommunication, rather, where we read and read things differently to the way they were intended, and it causes a lot of problems in the world. It creates wars, it creates arguments, it creates violence, it creates parting and breaking of relationships. And I firmly believe, like from someone really wise who's been in and out of my life for years, who always just simply said, understanding breeds love. And if we take more time to understand, then there will be more love in the world, because everything is understandable. Um, and that there's a root to everything, every person's behavior, whether we want to judge it as terrible or good, like good and bad, these words we like to define things by, which is like the most basic surface level of trying to understand something. Like when you go down to the roots, I think things are always understandable. My belief. And again, I'm just a little nobody, like a little dust to stand on this planet. Um, so back to the important thing is when I made this initiative during COVID called the Notebook Initiative, it came out of a place of serious concern because school went to be online and everyone thought this was fantastic. Like a lot of people not everyone, obviously. A lot of people who run things in the world thought that this was progressive and a good thing for the kids, and this was a solution. This was a solution. And obviously, it didn't take very long for everyone to understand that that is not a solution when most people don't have access to computers, far less like electricity, um, internet. So obviously, it's not a solution. And to just disregard, even if it was 1% of the world of children, adults who were lacking access to education, I think that's a really dangerous thing. I think it's really unethical. Okay, maybe that's a bit extreme. Well, the mentality of like, well, the 1% doesn't matter, I think unethical. I understand why you can't always find a solution for everyone in a pandemic, obviously. Um, and that was the biggest solution. So great. Like, and it was progressive and it was great in many ways. Like, it just shaped people's lives so differently, but it wasn't the full time solution. Um, so I made the Notebook Initiative, and that was out of like trying to tackle this problem of illiteracy. Illiteracy meaning people who can't read, someone who can't read and write necessarily, um, and then lack of education because there was a lot of people with no education, and that's not just in Trinidad and Tobago, that is around the world. I live in England, that's meant to be a first world progressive country, and the amount of issues that I've seen in the past few years so blatantly, and the amount of solutions that the amount of problems they're not addressing, it just goes to show you, like, I think actually in Trinidad we tend to deal with some crisis way better than um, places that are seemed or claimed to be more progressive in the world. And I guess that's one thing, like, I would say I'm lucky about, like, leaving Trinidad, is that I got to see the grass is not always green on the other side. Actually, the grass is quite green in Trinidad. The sky is quite blue, and it's such a beautiful place. Nobody could touch that. I actually go on and on and on and on about how great I think Trinidad and Tobago is, and I firmly believe that. And when people tell me you're so lucky, I'm like, yes. And when people only know this great country, which is actually a blue state, I'm like, yeah, I feel sorry for you. I genuinely mean that, and they know it, and they understand. They agree. So, all of this being said, 7 minutes and 40 seconds, I just want to make it clear that I am not in any way attacking anyone by saying the word illiteracy. I'm addressing the fact that there are a lot of children around the world that are illiterate in the sense that they can't read, or their level of reading and writing is quite basic and not advanced. And there is a direct problem attached to this, in that that limits someone automatically, because you can't apply for so many things in this world where the requirements are unfortunately higher, or it is required that they are higher because of whatever the specifics of that job role is. And I don't want to, I think it's an issue to be addressed, because I don't think anyone wants to be limited. I think if people have a dream, they want to fulfill it, and maybe they don't always have the tools on their own to do that. And the Notebook Initiative was sort of just thinking of all sorts of ways. There's no, because I don't believe in this one solution for everything. It was about bringing all sorts of minds from all over together, to try and find solutions from people who work in all sorts of different areas. And of course, I'm an artist and a creative and a designer, so I come from this from a very visual and creative and, you know, artistic perspective. But someone who's in education will come from it from a completely different perspective. And that was the cool thing of this project from the beginning, that actually started all the way in 2020, 2021. Well, 2020, as soon as the pandemic happened, the thought process started. The project, the Notebook Initiative, was started in 2021. And the amount of minds that have thoughts, opinions, people that have shine light on how this is formulated, it's mad. Like, I can't go into that now. But basically, one project, just because I've been working on children books that with a friend of mine, two friends of mine, they've been addressing like moral things, ethical things. Like my specialty is waste cycles. I'm obsessed with it, and the environment and respecting the environment. And that's definitely things that I've not learned in university. They were ingrained in my upbringing in Trinidad. I learned so much just from being a trainee, respecting nature, like being resourceful, not wasteful, not consuming too much because we didn't always have much to consume. Um, and then my friend, her specialty is mental well-being, and we're bringing all these things into our books, which then I just thought, oh my god, rather than push this in terms of wanting to make money, we wanted to like give our books to free for kids who may not have access to these things because books are expensive. And then this library project happened, on the premise of like just seeing like from my god kids, I have so many godchildren, like they outgrow stuff and they're aware of these issues, and they actually had a lot of concern. I remember during COVID, like what about the kids who don't have computers, because it was a big issue in England, far less in Trinidad. And I have people working on projects like where they were refurbishing laptops, collecting old laptops and tablets and refurbishing it and giving it to kids. So my whole thing is, if people can actually spare a laptop and a tablet, obviously everyone can't do that, but some people can. I believe on a much smaller scale, that therefore, if I see that actually happening, and that's such an amazing thing that was being done at a time in need, my thought process is like one spare book from a library when you have a library and kids who've outgrown it, and that we were kids and we had books and we hold on to some of these books. I didn't really think that was such a big deal personally. Maybe that is a big deal for some people. I understand. But I wasn't asking everyone to be part of this, and I definitely wasn't. I wasn't expecting. I don't expect people to be touched by this, um, not at all. But I didn't think like 500 books. Asking for 500 books was such a great task, to be honest. For myself, like it's a task I set for myself. Like even if at the end of this I only collected 20 books and I had to find 500 books myself, so said, here in England, or buying it from Trinidad and supporting other artists, because there's so many great like authors and illustrators from Trinidad with amazing stories that I buy and give to my godkids in England, so that they learn a perspective of another part of the world and they love it because they've never experienced it. Um, yeah, I didn't think that that was so crazy. And when I actually started this, the way things grow is that people then reach out to me and they're like, I can see that working in this place, because I wanted to give my books away, start off with giving my books away. And then I was like, I think I could do more than just a book, because a child reads a book in 2 seconds. I was like, maybe I should make a little library to give to these spaces where these people have reached out to me and shown their interest. And then I just thought, how the hell am I going to fund this? I can't. Like, you have to be realistic. My specialty is sustainability. Like, a big part of sustainability is how you're going to finance things. It's economy. And I couldn't do that. So then I thought of creating this initiative, and just as an experiment, people responded, but also seeing all the beautiful things that could grow from it. And so many people reached out to me with ideas like, that could be so nice in this space, and maybe like people could come in and read with the kids, like in orphanages, which in England don't exist because studies have shown that kids need, like, basically, like, kids need a certain level of interaction, and they've brought it down to the science of like, one adult should have 4 kids, which is like a standard rule in childcare in England, that you can't, like, if you do that as a job, you can't have more than 4 kids, because they need, for their actual development, um, not just their physical development, their mental development, their minds, their brains, they need a certain level of interaction with adults, including like reading and just touching and like just affection, um, which I find quite interesting. It's actually an area I'm very interested in, education, like psychology, mental development, because we're all impacted and affected by it. And if we bring little humans into the world, I guess you just kind of would have an interest. Maybe not everyone. I would. I do. Um, so basically, that probably is now me, like, letting you see the inside of my mind of where this 500 books project has come from. Some people have asked me where these books going. As I said, people have reached out to me. There's some places I've reached out to. It's not even that many libraries, about 500 books, but that's only going to be making 12 libraries, which we're making as part of my design practice. I've designed these libraries, and I am, as in like a product that I want to make and sell, but I'm making the first like the first ones that can make me first limited edition, and I want to give that away. I don't want it to be sold, because that's not actually, that was not the point of it. It wasn't about money. It was actually about seeing how this, if it can work, and putting it somewhere where it's, because that's the thing. I was actually offering to make this for someone, and they didn't want it, and I thought, at first I was a bit offended. I'm not gonna lie, but then I actually thought I shouldn't be offended. The reason they don't want it is because they don't need it. So why don't I find somewhere where someone actually would be grateful for this? And I'm gonna make a second video now on, because this is quite long, and I guess I have a lot to say, and I said I'd make another video that's a bit longer, but I might as well just nip it in the bud and do it now. Actually, I'm not gonna make another video. Let's just do this. So back to this word, literacy. I guess I'm just really sharing. I've never done this before, where I really just expose myself and my thoughts and my mind on social media. Totally against it sometimes, but this upset for this word, my posters, illiteracy, which was so well intended, it really like upset me in the sense like I couldn't sleep, because I felt bad and I felt guilty, and I felt I had to like let all those emotions drop, and then like remember, like, I didn't do anything with an intention to hurt someone. So the most I could do is take accountability for that. Because if this one person has expressed this to me, I know like many people must have felt like that reading this. And it made me reflect. So my sleep wasn't like anxiety, like, I'm awful. It was more like my sleep deprivation wasn't about that. It was more like, I need to reflect on this and see how I can communicate better, because the last thing I want to do is offend. And it did make me reflect. And this person particularly, and also just growing up in a bilingual family, I actually came to think about this word illiteracy and understand actually how much there are many things that actually I reflected on. I reflected on being raised in a bilingual family, and you know, when English is not your first language and you're being raised in a country that's predominantly English or whatever. Well, I can't speak for the parts of the world, but in Trinidad, you know, people might make fun of how you say things, or that you mispronounce or say things, and that you might get bullied for it. People are bullied for it, and then they have this trauma that is attached to that language, like that, like illiteracy. And I actually have been witness to someone who's thought illiteracy as like something negative and bad, and thought their literacy, their academia, their knowledge to be like some sort of superpower, or to make them better, like, because there's such a problem and issue I've experienced in education in Trinidad and Tobago, where academia is deemed to be like the highest thing to some people. I've never been that impressed by it, to be honest, because the people who have impacted me the most in my life have been from the littlest villages and the littlest corners of Trinidad. I tell everyone this, living the most simple lives and just sharing and caring and living on a real basis of love. And I guess the morals and principles of religion have been there. Yeah, so that's my views on academia, to be honest. However, you can't knock that academia has done great things. It has. But with everything, there are pros and cons. My whole thing is, I see an issue where kids who don't have access to education may develop some sort of learning problems. And due to these things, there may be limited possibilities for them. And I think that's such a shame, because I think everybody is worth having whatever they want in life, and they deserve that. And I guess coming to England and seeing, like, I see it. People are motivated to send their kids to school because they are scared to get in trouble because it's illegal. Whereas in Trinidad, we don't really have that pressure. Like, if we didn't go to school, our parents didn't have to hold any accountability. So it happens. And I will never forget. There was like it was like an online learning thing my cousin showed me when I was like just doing GCSEs, Khan Academy. And I remember that just sticking with me when she explained it because the Khan Academy philosophy was if you don't get everything right in the lesson, you can't progress. And that ideology was that because that 1% could be so important to unlock so many other things in life. And I thought that actually is a great sort of philosophy and theory and ideology because it's true. Like when I think about it in the sense that if you're not, as a parent, being held accountable for your kids to go to school and they don't go to school one day. And that day was when someone came in who was speaking about chemical engineering. Let's just get really random and give random explanations. But this chemical engineering engineer was studying the sea moss on the coast of Trinidad and how that could change the world because right now we're in an epidemic of like so much waste and we need to find ways of making a material that mimics plastic that needs to be biodegradable because there's so much plastic and it is ruining the ecology, ruining the planet. This is facts because children are swimming in plastic, picking it up because first world countries pretend that they have recycling schemes that recycle all the plastic, but everybody knows they don't. And what they do is well, everyone doesn't know this. And what they do is they sell this plastic to poor countries who claim that they do, which these countries know they do not. They just out of sight, out of mind mentality. And these poor countries are taking that money because they need it, because their countries probably don't have other things to rely on, their economy, like tourism or oil and gas or whatever. And that's just luck, geographical luck. If you have that where you are, that is just luck, randomness. But yeah, so, and rather than these rich countries building up these smaller countries, what they do is they just destroy them, sell them their plastic. So, anyways, back to the made up story I'm making up. So imagine that day that chemical engineer came in there and he was explaining like how amazing Trinidad was. Like we're doing this study in CMOS and they're from Togo and there's CMOS everywhere and they're obsessed with CMOS. They drink in CMOS their whole life. They understand the benefits of it and now they see a whole new layer of it and they're like, wow, I didn't even know what a chemical engineer was, but I want to do that, which would have motivated them to do all sorts. But they didn't come. And you know why? They didn't come because their math teacher in first period was just not a good teacher. So they were just so unmotivated to come to school. I think that's really unfair. I think it's unfair that that child didn't get to see that there was more than just, that education was more than just like a really bad teacher in the first period of their day, every day. And the reason I say that is because I had that experience. Apparently, I went to like people say the most prestige, I don't even like that word, school in Trinidad and Tobago, and I had a terrible experience because it was, I think, more built for people who are quite academic, and I'm not. I am a creative, I'm an artist, I am a designer. I am, yeah, I like to create things, and it was not guided towards that. But I hated on it until now in my 30s. I'm like, actually, I kind of appreciated the fact that my teachers were annoying to the sense that they pushed us, even though it was like pushing in a direction I didn't necessarily want to do. But I used to think we had this mentality that, oh my God, we got put in business class because we kind of stupid. What I realize now is that's not true. We got put in business because our whoever made the rules and sorted out this stuff. Like being a designer and a creative actually is quite beneficial to have knowledge of business because you do have to, in a sense, be entrepreneurial if you intend to make money off of that. Let's be honest. Because yeah, I ain't surviving off of selling one painting. You have to have a sort of business mind if you're going to like survive off of that. Unless you choose to do something else that's how you survive and you allow yourself to just be creative and not want to make money off of that. Anyways, all of these things that I'm saying just come back to like why I think education is important. Like you may not see it any moment, all the importance, all the layers, all the levels, all the minds, all the people stretching out their arms to like just see you succeed. But eventually you do, and when you do, you see how privileged you are. And with that privilege, You can either just carry on being privileged and ignorant of that fact, or you can acknowledge that, take accountability, and then see how you can do the same for someone else. That is where my 500 books project is coming from. It's way bigger than just asking people for 500 books to put in a library to hang on a wall randomly that just ends there. There's so much more we want to do out of it. There's so much more that will come out of it that hasn't even been discussed yet or thought of yet. But this is the start point. But to just go around full circle, I acknowledge now in a way that I didn't acknowledge before because, as I said, I have a little puny brain, can't see everything. I'm no god. I didn't actually consider like how that word illiteracy would may rest on someone and how it could trigger feelings in someone. So I take accountability for that. I'm sorry if you were one of those people. That was not my intention. And I'll be changing that flyer today before it goes out because that's not my intention. I really don't want to offend. I just kind of want to put out my hand for people who need it because I really see issue with this in Trinidad with the kids. And on a personal level, I will say I see this because you see kids you grew up with in your house with a gun bashing your grandmother in her head because they've decided to join a gang because they think that's a way of living to make a few hundred or £1,000 a month. When actually, if you had education, you realize there's so much more. It really impacts you on a personal level that you feel like you need to do something. And that is something I have experienced. I mean, I didn't see that for myself, but to have my grandmother look at me in my eyes when after experiencing something like that and say, not I'm traumatized, not boo-hoo me, to say, I don't know what's wrong with these youth today. Like they don't know what they want, but there's something wrong here. Like when we were growing up, like what we wanted was education. Like for that to be her concern, like I'm concerned about these boys. What can we do for them? It shifts the way you think as well. It impacts the way you think and look at situations. And this is, again, as I say, not an issue in Trinidad and Tobago. I live in London. This is a huge issue in London. And the reason it says the Notebook Initiative, that's the name of the Notebook Initiative, tackling illiteracy and lack of education, because it exists in the world. But then in Trinidad and Tobago, it's because this particular project is it's intended for Trinidad and Tobago. I live in London. A lot of my friends, colleagues, people who follow my page, I have very few followers. I'm not popular, I'm not famous. But people who do have interest in the work I do, most of them, I'd say equal, are in England or all around the world. And I just needed to specify that this project is in Trinidad and Tobago because, interestingly enough, most of the phone calls I've got where people are like, I'm coming to bring books, have been in England. So I had to I always try to communicate as clearly as possible, and language and communication could always improve. I acknowledge that. And I'm going to do that today when I update my flyers. But it's just that thing also of, what was I saying? Yes, I needed to differentiate that this project wasn't in London because I didn't want 10 million books in my house, on my porch, in my fact, I don't have a porch, on my front step in London that I had to tote back to Trinidad. To me, that makes no sense. Again, which comes back to like my research and my area of study, that if you want things to be sustainable, like you need to start like what you could do in that particular place. Like me loading up a bunch of bags with books to go to Trinidad, thinking about that carbon and stuff. I was like, no, you can't do it that way. Like that makes no sense to me. So that's the reasoning. I'm sorry for anyone out there who I may have offended. I know I'm very aggressive. I have an aggressive way of promoting things. That's my personality. If it offends, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. If you have watched the 29 minutes of this, I'm grateful. Even if it lands on one ear. Have a blessed week. Happy Tuesday.